My wife chose to spend her birthday with a coworker instead of me. When I mentioned that I was considering filing for divorce, she brushed it off, thinking I was just bluffing. We had been together for 14 years and married for 12. Though our relationship had its flaws and difficulties, I never imagined infidelity would be part of the equation, at least not on my end. I always believed that, despite the challenges, we would work through them together. In September 2022, I was involved in a serious car accident with a garbage truck. Thankfully, I wasn't seriously injured, but the back pain that followed has been debilitating. I couldn't return to my job as an HVAC technician, and after trying to go back after 3 months, my condition only worsened, so my doctor took me off work. In May 2023, I had to undergo emergency surgery for a ruptured appendix. I woke my wife in the middle of the night, hoping she would take me to the hospital, but she was irritated and insisted on getting ready before we left. She even refused to drive, so I ended up driving myself with her in the passenger seat. After the surgery, the hospital wanted to keep me overnight for observation due to an infection, but when I asked her to stay with me and take some time off to help, she refused. At the time, I was focused on my recovery and didn't dwell too much on the lack of support. In June, during a conversation about our struggles, I jokingly said, "Don't let the door hit you on the way out." She snapped, saying she felt trapped and stressed. I understood her feelings, knowing that my inability to work was adding to her burden. I had applied for financial assistance to help with our mortgage and utilities, so she was managing the bills on her own. 2 weeks later, she told me she was spending the night with a work friend to talk through her feelings, and I encouraged her, hoping it would help us find a way forward. But then, she casually mentioned she was supposed to have dinner on her birthday with a coworker, instead of spending it with me. I later found out that this coworker was a man. We had a heated argument, and I went to my mother's house to cool off. When I went to a friend's place afterward, she accused me of giving up on the marriage. A few days later, I decided that 14 years was too much to throw away over a single argument. We agreed to try to work through our issues for at least 6 more months before making any decisions. But just 4 weeks later, I found out she had been searching for apartments. She suggested that having her own space might actually help save our marriage. I was confused. How would a year-long lease help us? And how did she expect me to manage the bills while I couldn't work? I told her if she moved out, I would file for divorce. She found an apartment she liked, applied for it, and was approved. When she got the approval, she went ahead with the move. I was left to handle everything financially, even though I'd warned her about what would happen. Despite everything, she seemed determined to go through with her plan, and I was left to face the consequences alone. Her departure brought both relief and distress. On one hand, it gave me space to reflect on our relationship, free from the constant tension. On the other, the reality of living alone after so many years together was heavy. Over the months that followed, we communicated sporadically. Our conversations were tense and filled with unspoken resentment. Meanwhile, I was still dealing with my health issues and the emotional fallout of our separation. I eventually realized that our marriage had fundamentally changed and that we were no longer able to support each other in the way we once did. The unresolved issues and her decision to move out made it clear that continuing the relationship would likely be harmful to both of us. About 2 weeks before she moved out, I had a gut feeling that she wasn't being entirely honest with me. So, I made a decision I'm not proud of. I went through her watch while she was at work. What I found shook me. She had been communicating with another man for several months. One of the messages I found was her asking him when and where they could meet up. When I confronted her, she dismissed it as a joke. But when I explained how hurtful and damaging her actions were, she told me that since I hadn't been intimate with her, she had to look elsewhere for satisfaction. For months, she had been rejecting my attempts at intimacy. After all of this, I finally made the decision to file for divorce in August 2023. At first, she thought I was bluffing, but without children to complicate things, the process was quick. By December 2023, we were officially divorced. There were countless instances of gaslighting and other toxic behaviors during this time. But as painful as it all was, I wanted to share my story to emphasize one thing. If you're being mistreated in a relationship, don't be afraid to leave. No one deserves to be disrespected or taken for granted. In the 2 weeks before she moved out, we fought often. She frequently referred to me as broken due to my physical pain, but despite everything, I helped her move out. She had no one else, and I thought maybe it would provide me with closure. Once she was settled into her new apartment, we went through the legalities of our divorce. She kept her things, and I kept mine. In October 2023, she was involved in a car accident that totaled her vehicle. She was fine, but she asked if she could borrow my car to get to work. I refused. I also refused to give her rides due to my own doctor's appointments and therapy. This led to another argument, where I told her she was no longer my concern. From that point on, our communication diminished significantly, and we spoke only when necessary, mostly to exchange information like her new address. I've been working on healing physically and emotionally. Recently, I had a procedure to help manage the chronic pain in my back, and I'm hopeful that it will allow me to return to some normalcy. As the new year began, I decided to start dating again, to get out of the house, and to explore new experiences. It's time to move on and begin a new chapter.